Hey, and welcome back to Rennch. This video is part 3 of my recreation of the rear interior of this 1969 Porsche 911S race car converted back to a street car. So if you watched the last episode, you'll see that I used some cardboard-aided design to fabricate a front panel and then one of the side flat rear panels, the one that my battery is going to be sitting on. Since then, I have finished the other side of the panel, and now both of them are in. I've also capped my torsion tubes, welded them up, painted them up. I have capped the top of my rear control arm mounts, and that effectively completes the inside structural stuff that has to be done before I mount all of this rear seat delete. Here's where the big challenge lies. Now that I've put the engine and transmission back in the car, a number of engineering problems have popped in. Number one, I had completely forgotten that the transmission itself was asymmetrical. It wasn't centered in the spot. So my panels that I created are a little bit offset. Not a huge deal. I can weld in a piece on the panel I just created, or I can just cut another one out and fix it that way. Number two, there's a brake switch that's right in the way of the rear seat panel. So I'm probably going to have to create something to either bring the switch in from the underside or have some sort of pass-through in my seat pan so that I can put the brake switch in that way. Number one, my actuating lever of the transmission was actually hitting my brand new engine cradle. So it was knocking into it, which is a big problem. So I'm gonna have to raise the transmission a little bit, which might mean that my axles are gonna be a little bit out of sorts. I don't know how to cure that yet, but we're gonna figure that out. Number two, the actual cables that I need to run the actuation lever are gonna need to either go through the pan or I'm gonna have to create some super hump in the transmission tunnel. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it yet. Today's episode is going to be me sort of on and off video trying to figure out how much transmission tunnel I'm going to need, if I need to route these cables underneath and up, or if I need to route them into the rear seat area and through. I don't know yet. So you guys are gonna hang around with me while we figure all that out. I need to do a bunch of cardboard-aided design today, and with any luck, I can get a few metal pieces tacked in. I've got my shifter back in, and as you guys saw, I have it functional. So I think I'm gonna trim this piece, kind of like that piece, if I'm being honest, and give it that much space. So I have some clearance here for this brake switch and for these cables. So I'm gonna trim it a little bit and see if I can actually get away with this OEM setup. If I can, then I'm good to go, and I can just continue to make my cardboard templates. Okay, I've got this thing trimmed now, so now my cables are fitting just great. Next thing I've got to do is start thinking about a piece that's going to go over the transmission. And I also have to think about, like, I'm like, man, it's so big, it's so bulbous, but you got to remember the entire thing is going to be covered with this wooden rear seat delete kit. The goal is to see if I can make one piece that might cover from, I don't know, maybe here, like the front section, to maybe over this section here. So I have a nice big chunk of square, and then I can do another one that is a little more cone shaped here and kind of square it off on the front, and then I can do a little bulb here. So I've got a few pieces I've got to fabricate. I'm thinking of being able to do a piece that goes across here, has a little hump, and then goes back that way so the transmission can fit really nice in there. All right, I got some paper, I got scissors, I got a Sharpie, I got some blue tape. So I have everything I need, hopefully, to start figuring out how this puzzle goes together. One thing I should note is, in between all of these sessions of welding and grinding and stuff like that, I always clean up. So right now there's no dust in the car. I've swept it out on the underside, partially because I don't want to roll around in dust and metal shavings, but I think it's just good practice to keep your workspace relatively clean while you're working in it. So anyway, let's figure this thing out and see how many pieces I'm gonna need. Progress update. This is where I am so far. I made this a couple of times, and I decided, instead of sort of letting it be asymmetrical, that I would make this piece symmetrical. So there's going to be more room on that side than that side. And I also made the decision to kind of go stealth fighter with this. So instead of making rounded organic shapes, I'm going to stick with flat surfaces. And part of the reason why is it's easier for me then, if I need to put brackets and things like that for wiring, I can do them all underneath here. But it's coming along. I need to make a couple of more pieces, obviously, for these two holes, and then kind of look at all my clearance, and you know, I might have to cut this thing this way. We'll see. We'll see how this all goes. Okay, so I've got these two paper pieces in place. I'm going to cut them out of metal and work on tacking them in. Once these two pieces are in, it'll be easier for me to fabricate each section this way. Then I have some stuff to do with these bottom pieces before I weld everything all together. Okay, I've got spot weld holes all the way along. I've ground down the inside towards the back of the car. So now I'm gonna try to get the thing ground and fit. And then I'm gonna put a couple of Tech screws in to hold it before I put a couple of tacks in. right, dudes, I got the piece screwed in and it looks great. Next item up for bid is to get this piece made of metal, which I'm gonna make oversize. Remember, you can always make it bigger and then trim. It's much harder to go the other way. Okay, I've got this piece very roughed in. You can see what I'm doing though is with every piece I do, I try to have an overlap that I'm gonna be doing spot welds with. And that way I get some structural rigidity in the middle of all this sheet metal. So this is gonna be 2 layers here. It's gonna be 2 layers here. This is obviously gonna be way too high. Even when I notch these out, which is the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be notching these pieces out so they sit flush. Then I'm gonna measure basically from here to the bottom, and I'm just gonna continue to lower this thing down until it's a nice snug fit. Okay, it's been a couple of days and I've been fiddling a little bit with this piece. It's a little complicatory, but I think I've got it much closer than it was. So I'm gonna show you guys kind of what I've done, how it fits now, and what the next steps are. So the first thing I did is I taped some 1-inch foam to the transmission itself. And that allowed me then to get a little bit of clearance as I was setting up my templates here, these foam core templates. So I could basically rest it on top of here and figure out what my angles were. The angles so far have been the biggest challenge of this whole thing. When I put this thing in place, and it's got a little bit of trim happening right now, it's roughly centered. It needs a little bit more dialing in, but what you'll see is that I've got a perfect gap on the inside here. And for this front section, I want to come down and then come in. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut along each of these 2 lines here. And I'm going to bend the inside in so the nose of this thing scoops down a little bit. And I'm going to, the hope is to make more of like a cone that's happening in the front here. Basically make a line somewhere around here and then cut it on each side and dip this thing down and maybe try to close it a little bit, move this thing down a couple of inches and maybe put a couple of tack welds. All right, here it is after all the cutting and grinding. Next move is going to be to cut here. And then I'm going to put a vertical plate down before I wrap around the nose of the transmission. Since my camera has been absconded at the moment, I just wanted to show you guys I'm in kind of the final stages of finishing this transmission mount, and I'm just trying to add a few more welds so I can grind them down and hopefully make this thing look pretty clean when it's done. Well guys, I finally got a chance to string a couple of hours together and I've made major progress here on the tunnel. I have to say this is unequivocally the most complicated thing I've ever made out of a flat piece of steel. just getting the angles right and the precision and everything I needed to do has been a challenge. I've gone through 19 different iterations to get to what you see here, but really proud. I just welded this up a couple of times and then ground it down. You can't even see it. It's like a nice seam. You can't even tell it was welded together. Super proud. I think one more video. I got to make these two panels, these holes, and then something for the front that I haven't quite figured out yet. And then finally, I get to actually create the rear seat delete. But really, really proud of how this thing looks right now. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I'm not even setting up my tripod right now. The camera is on top of the car. This has been a little challenge this week because a lot of people had my time. I couldn't just sit and work on the car like I wanted to, but we got it done. We got a couple of really major rear interior pieces done. I'm super stoked with how it's coming along. So I think one more video for this rear seat section and we should be good to go. We'll see. At any rate, as always, thank you guys for watching. It is tradition around these parts. Send me a high five. Let me know where in the world you are watching this video, even if you've done it before. And also, if you guys want some in-betweeners, make sure you follow my Instagram account at _Rennch_. So underscores on each end, wrench in the middle. I'll see you guys next time.